Okay, so harmonic analysis is really a fairly simple thing. We're going to have three different ways a dominant chord can resolve. So let's say we're in the key of C, and we want three different ways that a chord can go to C. All right. Well, one is that a G7 can go to C, so that G resolves up a fourth to C. All right. So a dominant chord can resolve up a fourth. A dominant chord can also resolve down a half step. So D flat down to C. Or a dominant chord could resolve up a whole step, B flat up to C. So those are the three ways that a dominant chord can resolve. Now let's just talk about that for a second here. So you have a chord progression, let's say that's, I don't know, 8 measures of C major, and you're saying, you know, this is really boring. I want to add some chords to it. Well, at any point that you want, you could throw in a G7, a D flat 7, or a B flat 7, and have that resolve back to C, and it's going to give a nice resolution. That's the thing. These dominant chords have a resolution, so you could just throw them in anywhere. As long as you follow them with the resolution that they need, it's going to sound like music. It's going to sound like the normal type of chord progressions you're used to hearing. Now you can take that one more step out. You could say, okay, well that's great. Well then if I had G7 going to C, which is G resolving up a fourth to C, why couldn't I put D7 in front of that? Because D7 resolves up a fourth to G, and G7 resolves down up a fourth to C. And the answer is yes, you can do that. You actually can keep building and building and building out chords as long as they're all resolving up a fourth, down a half step, up a whole step. You have unlimited number of chords that you can put into a piece of music to reharmonize it. And when you play it, it's going to sound musical. It's going to sound like everything is resolving one to another. And that's what's so cool about this. Now, how are we going to do this? Well, we're going to look at some different chord progressions. We're going to take the blues progression, a minor blues progression, and rhythm changes, which is a 32-bar form commonly used in jazz. But this isn't a jazz course. This is taking some basic chord changes and looking at ways to reharmonize them. This could be any type of changes. So don't think of this as you're working through this course as, oh gee, this is only for a jazz guy. This is for anybody. If you understand the way harmony works, then you can use this in any style. So that's what's cool about it. Now, the next thing is that we also can add in 2 chords. And this is where it gets a little complicated, and I think you should, read the accompanying material on this, but let me see if I can explain it to you and you understand it. If we had a G7, which could resolve up a fourth to C, we can put a 2 chord in front of that. What's the 2 chord of C? D. All right, so we could put D minor up to G7 down to C. All right, so that's cool. So that would be another reharmonization. So we have D minor to G7 to C. Now you say, well, okay, could I have something resolve into that D minor? Yes, you could. Let's say we wanted to have a dominant chord a half step above. So we have E flat 7 resolving down to D minor up to G7 to C. And we could keep building from there. Oh, you want something that resolves to E flat? Well, how about B flat? B flat resolves up a fourth to E flat. E flat resolves down a half step to D minor. D minor goes to G7 to C. Now, I might have went a little quick there for you, but I think the overall idea you have to see is that if you just have a few little simple rules, and then you look at all the possible ways that you can use them, it gets pretty crazy, all the different things you can do. And this is how music is built, harmonically. So if you understand these simple little rules, you'll be able to analyze any piece of music that is moving using tertial harmony. So that's what's cool. Now let's look at another example. I was saying that you could have a D flat 7 that resolves down to C. All right, so what would be, if we thought of D flat 7, okay, where does D flat 7 usually go? It usually goes to G flat, right? Up a fourth, so D7 is the 5 chord of G flat. So what would be the 2 chord of G flat? A flat. So if we put A flat minor in front of D flat, there's a 2-5. That's one of our rules. We can put an A flat minor in front of D flat, and then D flat will go down to C. All right. So there's another reharmonization. So you say, okay, well, could I put something in front of the A flat? Well, you certainly could. You could put an A7 in front of it. A7 resolves down a half step to the A flat minor. A flat minor is that 2 going to the 5 of D flat, and then it's going down a half step to C. So now we have two possibilities. We could go D minor, G7 to C. We could go A flat minor, D flat 7 to C. Very cool. Now the other one that I mentioned was a B flat 7 could go up to C, because a dominant chord can resolve up a whole step. Well, where does B flat 7 usually go? What is it the 5 of? It's the 5 of the key of E flat. All right. What's the 2 chord of E flat? F, right? So F minor can resolve to B flat, because that's the 2 to 5. I mean, I shouldn't say minor resolving. It's, you can put the F minor in front of B flat, and then the B flat resolves to the E flat. But the B flat can also go up to C. So there's a reharmonization. We could put F minor to B flat 7 and then up to C, right? Again, you say, whoa, could we put something in front of that F minor? Well, we certainly could. We could put an F sharp dominant, right? That resolves down a half step to that F minor. Then that F minor goes to B flat, and the B flat goes up to C. So I've just talked about 3 different ways that we could put minor chords in front of our 3 dominant chords that can resolve. Now, if we start doing all the different combinations of that stuff, we have a lot of things we can do. For instance, you could interchange the minor chords, okay? So let's say we had an A flat minor, and we talked about that could usually go to D flat, right? And then resolve down to C. Why can't we go A flat minor to G7 and then down to C? Yes, we can, because really we could interchange any of these minor 7 chords with any of the dominants. Now that opens up a whole new world of possibilities. And that's what's cool. And that's really the end of it. I know this is, if you're a beginner, this is like, what in the world is he talking about? So you may have to listen to this video a few times. But it's really 3 different ways a dominant chord can resolve. Down a fourth, down a half step, up a whole step, putting the related 2 chords of that dominant in front of it. And then that goes back to the 1. And that's it. And you can interchange those minor 7 chords. Now, I wouldn't worry so much about that right now, because as you work through the course, each thing gets progressively harder. All the answers are given in the back of the book. I'm available by email, so if you're running into a problem, say, hey Bruce, I ain't getting it. Right? If you have that problem, shoot me an email. I'll talk you through it, because it's so easy to get off and say, oh, I don't understand this, or this seems very complicated, and it's really not. It's just that usually what's happening, if you're listening to this and you're saying, I don't understand what he's saying, that means that your ability to think music theory is very weak. And we may have to work on that to bring it up to par so that you can quickly move through these chord progressions and exercises. But I have the courses to do that. They're not expensive. Most of them can be done when you're not even at home. They can be done as you're walking around on the street, just listening to MP3s. So, this process is pretty easy to get you up to speed with working through these things. I work with completely beginning students and work them through this. Yes, it takes them a while. Maybe the first couple progressions take a couple of weeks, but after a while, they're going through a really hard progressions, 1 a week. All right, so it's not that difficult, and I've seen through teaching many people over the years that you can develop this ability. So come on board with this. I think you're going to see that it's going to really change your whole understanding of harmony. And again, if you're having problems, just let me know. I'll step you through any problems that you're having.